Syria is no more, really. Israel occupies 3 times the size of the Gaza Strip of Syrian territory in just 2 days. And frankly, they can go as far and wide as they want. Nobody is opposing them. Nobody can oppose them. Any means of opposing them have been destroyed with the active complicity of those now in charge in Damascus. In fact, those now in charge in Damascus will not even utter a word of condemnation about Israel's seizure of their land. In fact, the new Che Guevara that is in power in Damascus has said categorically that his country is no longer an enemy of Israel, that his country will not fight a war with Israel. So Netanyahu can go as far as he likes, and he might go all the way. Why not? Now that all the Arab states are completely disarmed, now that the Syrian Arab Republic is no more, they don't have an air force, they don't have a navy. Israel has destroyed both of them in the last 48 hours. They don't have an army, they have an armed group of fanatic terrorists, of variety of plethora of different organizations, some of whom have even begun fighting among themselves already, and definitely will be within days, weeks, or at the maximum months from now. The Takfiri fanatics are crushing the Kurdish fighters in their enclave in Syria. They may find it a tougher nut to crack than the Syrian Arab army was in the end. These Kurdish groups are militarily, very experienced, very well armed, and crucially, have the support of the United States. So we now have an intra-NATO conflict going on in the north of Syria between Turkey and US-backed Kurdish opposition groups. But in the rest, in the rest of the country, things look black indeed. The black flags of ISIS and Al-Qaeda hang everywhere, are being paraded everywhere. The makeover that CNN, and CNN and the New York Times tried to give them has been just as quickly washed away. Beheadings have begun. The murder of people for no other reason than their religious affiliation has begun. Social media is filled with videos too lurid for me to recommend that you watch. And you'll never see them in the mainstream media because they're filled with the horrors, real and alleged, real and false, of the outgoing regime. And they have no interest in showing you what it is that they have just encouraged into power. But this Syria story is not just a local story, and certainly not for me, who have spent all their lives, people like me, supporting the idea of an Arab nation of all kinds of religions, and none stretching from Marrakesh all the way to Bahrain, 350 million people with a common language, with a common culture, believing in one single God. What a power, I always argued, it could be. But that idea is dead now. It may come back in the lifetime of my children or their children, but it's definitely dead for now. And it's just one of the corpses lying in the debris of the destruction of Damascus. But there are many others. The reason I quoted Rumi earlier about the fools and the facts, I still see and have heard from people who consider themselves to be supporters of the Palestinian cause. I see Palestinian flags in their bios, and I see underneath those bios celebration at the destruction of the Syrian Arab Republic. They don't seem to realize that with the destruction of Syria came the destruction of the Palestinian struggle. Of course, the Palestinian people themselves will struggle until the last bullet runs out. But the last bullet will run out very soon, you know. I don't know if these fools are fully appraised of that singular fact, that every bullet, every one, in the hands of any Palestinian freedom fighter came through Syria from Iran. It didn't come from anywhere else. It couldn't come from anywhere else. It wouldn't have come from anywhere else. There's an amazing number of fools completely blind to that fact. Of course, the Palestinian people will continue to feel that they are a people. They'll continue to resist with their teeth if necessary. But their teeth may also very soon be destroyed. The only thing stopping now, this night, the opening of the gates of Rafah and the driving out of 2 million Palestinian refugees in Gaza, as the north of Gaza has been ethnically completely cleansed, the south of Gaza can be completely cleansed by the simple act of opening the gate which Israel controls at Rafah and driving all 2 million of them into the Sinai Desert in Egypt. Who's going to stop them? Who could stop them? Who would stop them? The answer to both those questions is nobody. So the only thing stopping it is Netanyahu's unwillingness for the moment to do it. But for how long will you be able to count on that unwillingness? Until January 20th? Maybe on January 20th? Maybe before the attack on Iraq that I talked about earlier begins? Maybe when it's completed? Or maybe when it's happening? One way or another, Gaza is done for. Gaza is finished. Only a week ago, it was possible to talk about a strategic defeat of Israel that would deliver a Palestinian state. Iran was a regional superpower only a week ago. Syria was the transmission belt for the supply of the Lebanese resistance, of the Palestinian resistance. Now it is neither. And Iran is a local superpower with no regional potential or capabilities at all. Iran's still the big dog in the Persian Gulf, but it now has no crescent through which to exert its influence for the liberation of Palestine. And looking at my watch, it doesn't look likely that their much promised retaliation of Israeli crimes against them is going to come after all. A recognition of the truth that Iran, as well as Russia, as well as Syria, and as well as all the Arabs, are much diminished now in the wake of the great victory of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, with hardly a shot being fired in the former Syrian Arab Republic. You can celebrate that if you like, and there's a remarkable number of you doing so, but I can only be sad about it. Not because I loved Bashar al-Assad any more than I loved Saddam Hussein, but because the destruction of Arab power can only, as a matter of simple logic, lead to the strengthening of other powers adjacent The destruction of Arab Iraq meant the strengthening of Persian Iran. The destruction of Arab Syria means the strengthening of the former colonial power in Turkey and a strengthening of the now occupying power of Netanyahu's Israel. It has been, you don't like to hear this, a stupendous success for Benjamin Netanyahu. It has been a stupendous success for Joe Biden in the dog days of his, until then, ill-starred presidential term. Anything that reduces Iran, reduces Russia, reduces China, increases the power and strength of the United States of America. These are simple geopolitical facts. If you make one of them stronger, you make the other weaker, and vice versa. And that's where we now are. There is no Arab national movement. There are heroic and beautiful individuals who exemplify it, who embody it, like my dear friend Man Bashur in Lebanon, who will be crying. I know there are many such people in all Arab countries, but they add up to less than a row of beans in the new political dispensation. Now there are only two kinds of Arabs. The Takfiri, religious fanatics, who will takfir any dissent from their religious, never mind their political line, and the out-and-out slaves. But these are two sides of the same coin, you see. Because such Takfiri Islamist fanaticism can never liberate the Arabs, has no wish to liberate the Arabs, doesn't even see itself as Arab. There were only 25,000 fighters in Golani's army, and 5,000 of those were Chinamen. Chinamen, Uyghurs, who don't even speak Arabic, don't even know who the Arab music stars whose albums they're burning right now, don't even know who they are. Never tasted Syrian hummus or shakshuka. Don't care for it. They eat rice for their breakfast, you see. 5,000 out of 25,000 are Chinamen. Thousands more are Turkomen, Albanians, Ukrainians, who played a bigger role in the weekend's events than we hitherto imagined. They sent hundreds of drones, the Ukrainian regime, to Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and sent 20 operators with them, the better to target them. So the ISIS-Al-Qaeda invasion, which has succeeded in taking over Syria, isn't even Arab. Never mind have an Arab consciousness about the unity of the Arab world. And they're very useful idiots indeed. As Israel found when, without firing a shot, they expanded into Syria 3 times the size of the Gaza Strip and took all the commanding heights forever, eternally, as Netanyahu has declared. That suits the West very well. They can murder their own people. Who cares? They can murder their Christians. Who cares? They can murder their religious minorities. Who cares? As long as they don't threaten Israel, which, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said so eloquently yesterday, is our aircraft carrier in the Middle East, is our eyes and ears in the Middle East, is the means by which we direct events in the Middle East. Congratulations, Bobby, at least you're willing to tell the truth the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Or you can go the whole hog and be a slave. You can be a slave regime. Like the other frontline states, you can bark when you are ordered to. You can hang out your tongue and pant. And you can beg like a dog begs. You might even get the World Cup thrown in 2034 if you do. So the new world isn't being born after all. The old world isn't dying after all. The new world is still a pregnancy. It may, indeed, I believe, will have to one day come, but it ain't here yet. China issued no more than a couple of cross communiques about the events at the weekend, even though it's the end of the Silk Road, thousands of years in the making. The Russians left town. The full fruit of the 50-year friendship treaty with Syria being a billet and a doctor's surgery to work in Moscow for the departed President Bashar al-Assad and his family. Good luck to them. I didn't want them to end the way that Saddam ended. I wouldn't want them, God forbid, to end the way that Gaddafi ended. But maybe he should have at least made a televised address before he scuttled off to Moscow, killing off forever the very idea of Syria. Syria was a shining light, and for centuries. They threw their lot in with the West during the First World War. They were persuaded by Lawrence of Arabia that if they took up arms against the Ottomans and helped the West to defeat them, that the West in return would give Arab independence, Arab unity, and give Jerusalem the status that it deserved. What they did not know, or if they knew, chose to ignore, was that in the back room, Mr. Sykes and Mr. Pico were cooking up the books, which would divide the Arabs and which would grant Jerusalem to a Zionist state, which now lies at the heart of all this darkness. We're going to discuss it tonight with two perfect guests. Coming up right after this is Richard Medhurst, the renowned independent journalist, political analyst, and a young man who was born and baptized in what used to be called Syria. Stay tuned.